everybody doing on this snowy, whatever day this is, Wednesday? I am delighted to be here. I'm really looking forward to seeing the work that has come from our fashion farming course. So I started to think about this whole idea of fashion farming. Obviously, there's some little riff going on here that plays back to the department chair's name. But in thinking about fashion and farming, if you dig just a little bit deeper, you find out, first of all, that these are two of the oldest words in the English language, and that there's a big debate, actually, if you dig even further, there's a big debate about where these words originated and what they meant from the beginning, eons ago. So I'm going to spare you that analysis of the etymology of fashion and farming, but I encourage you, if you're at all interested, to look into that because it's a little spiral that you will go down and never come out of. But I think there are a couple of seeds to be planted here today, if I might. Fashion and farming, they're both nouns and verbs, right? I work in fashion, I fashion myself an intellectual. I own a farm, I actually do. And I farm the land. So there's a lot of activity embedded in the words themselves. But for purposes of today's symposium, I just want to say there are kind of three main touchstones or nodes that relate to fashion and farming that are really relevant to the symposium and to the work that all of our students have done. First, both fashion and farming are creative acts. They require imagination. They also require skill, but you have to have a vision and a kind of inspiration to go into either area. Secondly, they're both commercial enterprises. Anybody who's been attending any New York Fashion Week events or reading any of the press about that realizes just how deep that commercial imperative is in the fashion industry. In farming, of course, you can only think of the word market, and you're right at the center of where the commercial enterprise is there. And finally, both fashion and farming are customizable activities. So you can put together an infinite variety, an infinite number of combinations of things in either field. So that in the end, in both fashion and farming, you're coming down to personal identity, self-expression, and your own place, arguably, in the world. So today, we're going to look at how this illustrious group of MFA students capitalized on the opportunity of being on a global field study in Japan, looking particularly at denim, to see what infinite possibilities they came up with. I want to say a word of thanks to Professor Kyle Farmer, Professor James Mendolia, Ariel Alaya, Henry Wallace, who's our new studio technician. Kyle, am I missing anybody? Okay, good. Of course, all the students and all of our industry partners who helped to make this possibility a reality. And next year, I'm going with you. All right, turn it back over to Professor Farmer.
Thank you, Mary. That was really beautiful, actually. Thank you very much. So, actually, to piggyback off that, and we actually didn't plan our speeches in any way, shape, or form to piggyback the way they did. No, we did plan our speeches, but not in the way I'm about to speak to why it's called fashion farming. So as an educator, I see myself as a farmer of people, as a farmer of planting seeds and giving them inspirations to ways to make them move forward in ways that they may not have known before. So that's where fashion farming was born of my way of being able to take students into places and expose them to things that they wouldn't normally see to help germinate new ideas and new thinking around fashion design. And denim and Japan was the first of, well, everything with this particular group. So actually, can I acknowledge them? Everything for this particular group is the first. So congratulations on that. But this is the first, it's actually the second one. The first one is called FITIF, where we go to London, Paris, and Milan to explore fit. We do that through visiting various places like Savile Row, different designers, looking at fitting techniques, both historical, future. We look at automotive sort of production, so fitting in cars and ergonometry and so on and so forth. And we work with the Politecnico University in Milan for that one. Excuse me. I got a lovely gift off Anastasia, which is why I sound the way I do right now. So that's the first one, which is a much more sort of around tailoring and making clothes. The second one is this one, which is called fashion farming. And the first one was in Japan, and it was around denim. James Mendolia will give you more information on the details of that. I'm just going to give you some sort of scope on the next one that's happening, which is in the summer, where we are taking the students to Peru to explore alpaca and wools. So we're going to be doing these things frequently, but focusing on different things. So it might be jersey one year, it might be cotton another year, it might be whatever, we don't know. But I'm going to stop because I'm waffling. I'm going to hand it over to James, and thank you, everyone. James, Ariel, thank you so much for your hard work, and Mary, thank you for making this happen. Thank you very much.
Good morning. So I'm actually going to provide you with a little bit of an overview of the course, because for me as an instructor, I felt like super lucky to be able to take this group of talented students to Japan in January and really have them dig into what makes denim manufacturing so interesting. The fashion farming course actually provides a great opportunity for experiential learning, where they get this knowledge firsthand and they're able to pick up different topics and really look at how fashion in the global aspect and the local aspect have an impact around the world, almost pretty much like a domino effect. And the goal is for them to look at not just fashion, but to look at political, economic, and social settings, which you'll see in their presentations, and really look at the importance of regional manufacturing and production in an effort to sustain artisanal skills as well as expertise. And in this particular course, what you'll see is that the students were quick to notice that craftsmanship in Japan is incredibly important, and it's valued as a life skill, not just something that is disposable, which to me was quite fantastic. As I mentioned, the experiential learning also allows them to evaluate fashion systems, a wide range of different fashion systems, and to really look at the cultural perspective too, and how that has an impact on economy, local and global economy, and really looking at sort of a wide range of issues. And to me, what was super fantastic was each morning, because of jet lag, I was up at 6:30, 7 o'clock down in the lobby, and I was fortunate enough to be able to have one-on-one discussions every single morning with each of the students, and they pretty much were giving me their interpretation of what they were witnessing, what they were experiencing, and what they valued. And on top of it, through personal contacts as well as reaching out to industry, we were lucky enough to see some of the best leaders in denim in Japan, hands down. They were pretty fantastic. So I'm not going to go on any further, but the goal is, again, to look at that global and local aspect and the impact on fashion systems around the world, which will come across loud and clear. And this morning, through their collective experiences, again, this talented group is going to share their findings, and I hope that you enjoy it. So I'm going to pass the microphone over to Ariel, and she'll introduce our first speaker. Thank you.
So we're now going to move on to the student presentations. So throughout the course, each student had a specific research topic, which they'll be presenting on today for about 10 minutes. And then after the first half, we'll have a Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. And our first presenter is Amy Sperber, and she'll be presenting on Borough, Pure Necessity to Luxury.
Okay, it's tight up here. Okay. So, Borough translates into tattered rags, essentially. It is the practice of garment repair for sustained use. The objects we got to study were located in the Amore Prefecture, which you can see is at the most northern end of Japan. Generations of families used natural resources to maintain a limited wardrobe that they owned. This was out of economic necessity, and a sign of actual collective poverty amongst the community in the prefecture. Hemp fibers were actually cultivated in the region and had properties to warm in the winter and repel insects in the summer. And the items that we had the opportunity to study were collected by Chiburo Tanaka. He had found over 1,500 pieces in a 50-year time frame, and these were exhibited at the Amuse Museum in Tokyo. Just to give you some context on materials, at the time, there were limitations on silk and cotton use to the general public, so all fabric had value, including little scraps. Many example of burro patchwork is in the blue hues that come out of the azome dyes used at the time to color textiles. You guys are going to get an overview on azome in a few presentations from my classmates later in the symposium. The prints and patterns, though, give us a visual narrative to the surface craft at the time. So the interactions that I got to have with burro. The Amuse Museum that we visited had 3 floors dedicated to preserving burro. The ability to touch the garments and accessories really added to the understanding of just how durable the mending process gives to the garments. Oh, I'm sorry, I moved too much. Okay, so I joke, but we broke the internet by sharing this example of me actually touching a dojo or a sleeping kimono. Curators around the world were horrified, but it gave you a real good insight. The ability to touch it really helped you understand literally the layered stories that were infused in these garments. So the methods, as you can see, garments were mended as wear and tear appeared. Top stitching is visible to give further strength to the textile, and many layers formed as garments were passed down. I like to think that ghosts of past use were saved in the fibers. And as seen in the image of this mitten, the palm panel has a repair at the point of repeated contact. So the repairs reveal the way users moved over long periods of time, and again, cultural trends in prints, patterns, and shades of indigo. And I got to put my hand in this glove and literally feel the impression of somebody from 300 years ago in a cold winter in the northernmost aspect of Japan. It's amazing. There are some adjacent practices. So if a swatch became too tattered, they were twisted together and woven into new textiles. This fabric is called sake ore, or tear woven cloth. This method can be seen today in household rugs and decor. And this is the first example I have of a luxury item using a historic practice. In contemporary Japan, though, it is very common to see newly made garments using burro as a source of inspiration. This contemporary reproduction is considered a fiber art. They do not call it burro at this stage. That is specifically a term used for the garments that we saw at the Amuse Museum. But these modern forms are considered luxury, as manufacturing is incredibly time-consuming, as you can imagine, because it requires many different textiles and many different stitch techniques. The jacket in this image is priced at $1,200. It was seen in a store in Okura, and the pants are from one of the vendors we visited, Momotaro, and they start at $800. This practice also makes its way around the world in the forms of workshops. Burro's global reach extends beyond Japan in many forms, often used to repair and mend denim at the points in where the garments wear out first. Knees and seats are patched and stitched to extend the life of the garment. And I like to think that this practice has translated into the privilege of mindful mending. So we can't talk about it without mentioning that it is inherently a zero-waste practice. Utilizing other garments to make a new style is somewhat a modern version of burro. While not economically required, given our current abundance of materials, it is a holistic practice and may become necessary again. The gentleman in this photo kindly showed me around his artisanal studio that had painstakingly remade denim garments into new styles. The price tags are reflective of his labor and craft. His jacket was $1,800. And I want to plant a seed that perhaps in elevating the approach to high art, as a society, we might see more value in a repaired wardrobe. Clearly, Japan does, right? So my personal takeaway as a fashion designer brings me into this space of 3D visualization. So I believe that the historic approach has tremendous value in a design practice today. So what you're seeing here is a strain map from a software that I use called Clo 3D. It lets me visualize a garment before I even make it. This is showing, based on the fit of this t-shirt, where wear and tear will appear. So by seeing the strain, I'm able to recreate reinforcements at spots that might typically wear out first. So combinations for me are very easily to visualize, and then before assembly even happens, I have a plan. And this is just one example of how Burrow has impacted my personal design practice. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Next, we have Yutong Wu presenting on heritage, identity, and economy.
Good morning, everyone. My topic in Japan is talking about the heritage, identity, and economy. At the very first, I want to ask a question. When we're in the Zara store, you guys wearing jeans, when we buy a pair of jeans, it's soft, it's fitted, it have those amazing texture on it. But do you know where those washing techniques come from and when it started to beginning? No. So you're gonna get the answer after I present. So talking about the history of the denim in Japan, blue jeans was introduced to Japan after World War II. When US soldiers began selling and trading their old jeans to black market, Japan Youngs was embraced import American pop culture like jazz, rock and roll, and also the famous star like James Dean, etc. So which jeans become a sample of an exotic next generation's cool. At that time, most men's pants come in wool, and cotton jeans was much better suited for the Japan's temperature. The blue color also stand out for a victory of blue. So it's a uniform color of American soldiers. By the 1950s, blue jeans made up half of the Marusaru style, which is a well-known clothes store located in Tokyo. According to the Hayama's wife, Chiyono, who is the owner of the clothes reselling store back to the 1970s, we would buy them at 300 to 500 a pair and then sell them at 3,000. Jeans was so popular that if you put them in the store, they'll sell out before you even put a price tag on. So 3,000 Japanese yuan is equal to $10 back to 1970s, which is $80 now, a buying power. So after all of this, as a result, the Kojima, population 75,000, sit on the Seto Island Sea at the very bottom of Okayama, become the heart of the production in denim. Start play a really big role in the denim production. Back to the 1920s, Kojima is being a nation's leading manufacturer of school uniform because of the foundation of the manufacturing. Back to the 1950s, most of the unfitted American jeans were shaped to the Kojima to fix. Gradually, Japan's retailer began import new pair of jeans like Levi's and Lee's into America, from America to Japan, but they're too expensive to a younger generation. Japan's fashion and retail entrepreneurs saw the potential in the market and realized they need to create the first Japan-made denim. At the mid of the 1965, the very first pair of the jeans was sold in Kojima, under the brand Kano, but facing the same problem with the import jeans. The Japanese consumer hates the feeling of the raw denim. It's hard, it's dark, and it's uncomfortable. Imagine all your friends wearing faded, cool jeans, and you got the jeans like totally black and hard like a cardboard, and you're asking them why this like hard, and they're saying like, oh, it just fade out like after years of wearing. It doesn't make sense. So this is where the washing industry start. The solution of the hard raw denim is to pre-wash denim jeans before they sell them. So the washing factories start their business on the side of the manufacturing, provide the servings of the wash. Finally, the boom of one-wash jeans since 1972 pushed Japan label quality denim to the world market, established Japan as one of the most important producer and traders in the world. By the early 2000s, the world has discovered the exquisite craft, evocative design, and clever cultural fusion of the new Japanese denim wave. Fashion bloggers become obsessed with the salvage denim and other trending repopulated by Japan jeans label, who themselves continue to innovate it. What we observe in Japan is like their style is totally different than American. Their denim, compared to American style, they're more solid and high functional with the pockets and all the like loosening fit. On the street, you can easily recognize them like purely blue with wearing faded and high function pockets and also loose fit. It's really inspired by working wear. But also there are also like on the other side, the fashion leading brand like Ivezu are also taking the innovative by pushing the traditional technique to create a new wash and pattern. I found these pictures on one of the magazine in Japan, like one of the fashion magazine in Japan, and they have those like amazing texture and washing garments and selling in Japan by the brand Ivezu. From knowing all of the history, the David Mars, who is the writer, historian, and critic of Japanese culture, and saying in his book Amar Torah, he said, "Denim gave Japan a new era of national pride. The country that set the global standard for fabric, high-quality sewing, innovative production technique, and ingenious treatment." As the this is just more picture of the Ivezu. So as a result, denim play a big role in Japan textile industry back to like 1970s. By the end of the 1977, denim export from Japan reached 30 million square yard and hits the record of 70 million square meters in 1983 due to the high demand of the stretch denim. But during the 90s, the Japan denim export number was dramatically went down because the rising manufacturing of China and others Asian manufacturing. So right now, the export of the woven textile is around like 140 million per year in Japan. One of the mail we visited was claimed that 67% was export to Western brands. That's my topic.
Jacob Hooker will be presenting on izome and natural indigo dyes.
Hello. So first of all, izome is the Japanese word for indigo. Everything from fabric and yarn to kimonos and futon covers have been dyed this rich color. Here we can see the plant origins of the dye. Species of Indigofera were cultivated in East Asia, Egypt, India, and Peru in antiquity. The earliest direct evidence for the use of indigo dates to around 4000 BC and comes from Huaca Prieta in contemporary Peru. The picture on the right shows indigo from Japan. So there are two different plants here. They look very similar, but they're different species. Both produce the chemicals needed for indigo dye. The leaves are harvested and carefully fermented. This process takes up to 100 days. Excuse me. Traditional methods produce a dye stuff that contains impurities and has a less intense color. You can see the difference here in these examples of indigo from different processes. A newer dye production process creates a richer color and has fewer impurities, but this requires more water. To dye, the indigo must be prepared into a solution. This tsukumo, as it's called, is considered to be a living thing. At Bunka Fashion College, we had the privilege of doing a traditional Japanese indigo dyeing workshop. These pictures show the pot of indigo we used there. You can see the scum that forms on top of the liquid. This is removed before dyeing. Mr. Ota led our workshop. He's an indigo textile master who has been working with indigo for 30 plus years. His hands are always blue from his work with the stuff. It's his badge of honor. I found oxidation to be a fascinating aspect of this dyeing process. It isn't until the dyed products hit the air that they turn blue. You can see the oxidation happening here. And Amy, if you want to pass, I brought 2 of the pieces of fabric that we dyed in this workshop that I would like for you guys to see. So please pass them around. Thank you. We combined this with submerging the fabric under cold water to bring about the rich indigo blue color. Dyeing can be combined with a multitude of tying techniques to produce patterns. Mr. Ota made these examples here with us. The star on the left was made by folding the fabric and tying it between 2 boards before dyeing. The parts that are tied remain white, and the other parts get exposed to the indigo and become dyed blue. Through my research, I found that indigo was prized by samurai who wore the cloth under their armor. The samurai valued izome not only for its beauty, but also for its antimicrobial properties, which helped prevent rashes and other problems caused by chafing and perspiration. And new research into indigo has shown this to be true. According to the Biodiversity Research Center in Taipei, izome has a surprising range of qualities. On fabric, it is antibacterial, flame-resistant, and repels odor and dirt. It is more than just a beautiful color. Thank you.
Next, we have Eliza Fisher presenting on Shibori Techniques, Japan Blue.
Hi, so I'm going to be elaborating on the conversation that Jacob just started, talking about indigo and specifically the meaning of the term Japan Blue and also the techniques of resist dyeing shibori and katazomi. So when we visited the Japan Blue factory in Japan, we were told the blue was the color that Westerners recorded seeing when they first visited Japan. And so it sort of became associated with the country as well. And in Japanese culture, blue symbolizes both purity and cleanliness. And in samurai history, it was generally considered a winning color. So it wasn't just worn under the clothing for other benefits. It was also considered a color that would help you win. In Japan, actually during the Edo period, which Amy mentioned this, there were bans on silk, but also limitations to fabric. So a lot of people were wearing cotton, and it was very functional for the farming life. And indigo takes very well to cotton, and this is sort of the period when a lot of the shibori techniques were being developed. So on the right is an image of borrowed textiles sort of showing some different indigo dyes, and the center is a block of indigo dye, and then the left is a wood block from the Edo period. So resist dyeing, basically as a description, is a traditional type of technique that uses substances or mechanical methods to prevent the dye from reaching all the parts of the cloth when it's dyed. So generally you're using wax, starch, rice paste, muds, or mechanical resists, as well as tying or stitching to manipulate the fabric. And just to put this in context of sort of different dye practices throughout the world, it is similar to a couple different techniques, and just an example of 3 is Bandhari in India is made by plucking the cloth with your fingernails into tiny bindings to form figurative designs. Adire, which is, I understood to be originating in Nigeria, used raffia, corn kernels, and cassava paste to create designs. And batik, which I think is pretty recognizable by a lot of us, used wax as the primary resist technique. So katazomi is a Japanese method of dyeing fabrics using a resist paste out of rice that's applied through a stencil. And the rice flour is applied using brushes or tools or a palette knife. So on the left, these are images from our indigo dyeing class at Bunka Fashion College, and on the left is a rice paste, which you can see the shiny parts or the rice paste that's been applied to a cotton fabric, and on the right is after it's been dipped in the indigo vat and the rice paste washes away, and you are left with this really beautiful white design. So these are examples of katazomi stencils, and they're made out of washi paper. It can take a person who does this professionally up to an entire day to cut one of these stencils. So it's a very precise skill and craft, and it's not practiced as much as it used to be. The stencil on the left, you can see there's tiny threads between the cutouts holding it together, which that was put into some stencils for the integrity of printing a wet substance through a dry one and not wanting it to tear. And samurais would often have custom katazomi stencils that they use repeatedly in their outfits. So these are some of the tools that were used. So the one on the left, or the 2 on the left, is a brush and a palette knife, and we have an example out there on our table of materials. And then on the right, this is an artisan using a very small die punch to punch tiny holes in a stencil, so you could see why that would be so time consuming. So the other resist technique I'm going to look at is shibori. And shibori comes from the root verb shiboro, which means to wring, squeeze, and press. And it's a method for embellishing textiles by folding, crumpling, stitching, plating, tucking, twisting material, and it's often secured using rubber bands, strings, or wooden blocks. So as Jacob mentioned, when the dye is prepared before it's put in the indigo vat, the parts where there's the most pressure on the dye or on the fabric don't take in the dye, and that's what gives you this really soft sort of geometric effect that's very indicative of shibori techniques. So there's about 6 primary techniques of shibori dyeing that I'm going to talk about. It's hard to specifically point to different areas of Japan and say this technique originated there, because there's a variety. It's sort of a mixed variety, but there's 6 central techniques that are used. And the first one is kanoko, and this is the thing we would recognize as the closest to our Western understanding of tie-dyeing, which is essentially folding or bunching a fabric and securing it, binding it with sections of cotton cord, or more, in a more modern interpretation, elastic bands, and it tends to give circular patterns. Mura is a technique that involves looping and binding the thread, so a hook or a needle is used to pluck sections of the cloth, and then the cord is wrapped around that section twice, and it's only tension that holds the cord in place. There's no knots used. This is sort of the easiest of, or one of the easiest of the sort of tying techniques used in shibori dyeing. Kumo is a technique that uses actual objects as resists. So the cloth is wrapped around the objects and they're held in place with the thread. And you can achieve a lot of different control and shape with this. And traditionally we were told that, you know, black beans or rocks, or really even a button, any object that you could wrap around in a fabric, could be used as a resist. Nui is a stitching technique. So this is just one example here, and it involves simply stitching the cloth and gathering it into place so that there are sections of the fabric that are tighter. But you can stitch in any motif, and you will get a different pattern. So that technique has a lot of variety within it. Arashi is one of my favorites, I think, just because it's so simple, but it involves wrapping and twisting fabric around a cotton or wooden or even plastic pole, and securing it with cord or rubber bands, and then scrunching that together. So it lends a very distinctive diagonal pattern. And itahime is a resist technique where the fabric is folded and sandwiched in different ways between blocks, and it's generally secured by rubber bands or cords. Modern interpretations of this involve using clamps and pieces of plastic, so that might be something you're more familiar with. So all of these techniques can be used in different combinations and with different ways. So I think that if you're an artisan in developing this, you probably have your own sort of repertoire of combinations. And these are just examples of the 6 previous techniques. And then these are some examples of different combinations of those techniques that we saw at Bunka Fashion College. And it was really amazing. They had like at least 60 different combinations. So it made me really realize how endless the variety was with this. And then to sort of come back to this idea of Japan blue and indigo, in a lot of modern objects in Japan, indigo's not just used on fabrics, it can be used in art practices, or my favorite is the shoe in the left. So I thought that was really interesting as a cultural touchstone. It's not just tied into fabric and the clothing we wear, it's tied into objects that are used. And then just to look at some sort of global influences on in fashion of indigo dyeing techniques. My favorite one in here is a lab craft scarf, which is actually a print of an indigo technique, and the Aizu Miyake code, I believe, too, is also a print. So indigo doesn't just exist culturally in the techniques, the more traditional techniques, but the sort of adoption of those motifs in prints today. So thank you.
Jingqi Yang will be presenting large-scale mass production rope dye.
Good morning, everyone. I will talk about the synthetic indigo mass production. After the Japan trip, I found that Japan has a long history in design technology. There are many indigo crafts and factories. My classmates Jacob and Elisha talk about the indigo design as well, but I will focus on the large-scale mass production, such as indigo design, white, and synthetic indigo, and so on. When I visit the company named Takaya Shuji in Okayama, I found that there is a complete manufacture system from product planning to manufacturing. They made the small roll of yarns to big warp beam in order to prepare for the mass production, and there are 2 sets of machines running at the same time for more quantities of the cotton yarns. there are two important processes for indigo design. The left picture shows the washing process. There are 12 groups of yarns across the washing machine at the same time in order to remove the pump on the surface of the yarns. The right picture shows that I walked up the stairs of the machine and found the indigo was in the big container, and the washed cotton yarn need to pass through this container. So what is indigo? Through the workshop at the Bunker Fashion College in Tokyo, I learned the indigo is a white dye and one of the earliest natural dyes. It's a blue powder, and it's hardly soluble in water and very sensitive to temperature and pH. The longer time I put the fabric in the indigo, the dark color will be showed. When I visited the factory in Okayama, there are some essential conditions for mass production dyeing. The temperature is about 98.6 degrees, and each roll passes through the indigo for about 20 seconds, and the capacity of the machine is about 1,000 liters. And during the dyeing process, the color of yarns will be influenced by how many times it has been reacted in the air. The yarn's color will be gradually changed from green to light blue, and then to the dark blue, and finally it will be fixed the color by the hot water. And I want to see the whole process from dyeing rope to package it. After warp dyeing, before I showed, they need to finish warp. They use the very special machine to shaft and then put them in the weaving machine in order to weave the different denim fabric. Finally, they finish the shrinkage and package them. It's the last step. And these two pictures shows the final indigo yarns. The right one is the indigo yarns before finish warp. The left one is the final indigo yarn. It's very stiff. That's all. Thank you for your listening.
Next, we'll have Junkai Huan, who will be presenting Global Advances in the Denim Systems.
Hello, good morning. As we know, denim industry makes so many beautiful jeans and play a very important role in local economy. But we cannot deny the harm from the dye process, especially like the sewage contains so many toxic substances. So how do Japanese mills like purify this kind of sewage? This time, my research is about like the solution, water solution of Japanese mills. And when we went to the factories, I found very interesting thing is like the village is nearby the factories. So how do Japanese mills make the sewage harmless? This is the step one. The factory you deliver the sewage to the first port. And because of the difference of different gravity of liquid and salinity, the water will be separated. But the water is still like toxic and not exactly clean. So this is step two. There has 9 ports to do the activated sludge process. And this process always take a longer time than other process, usually like 2 days. And the sludge like contains so many like active substances like bacteria, fungus, and protozoa. They eat the organic substances as the nourishment. By using it, the water like will be purified. And then, like the factory will use the big machine to separate the water and the sludge. And like a very magical thing is like the sludge will be used in planting. And finally, the factory will like deliver the water to the big pool. And we can look the right picture. The water is very clean. And this picture is about the color change at each stage of the process. And this is an evidence that the mills like take the water solution very seriously. And they have a tank with fish living in the water taken from the process. And as further proof, the mill's owner drink the water. And there is a certification organization called Confidence in Textiles. This organization like makes sure the industry is harmless, and also many customers buy the product depends on this. And this organization like to push the industry use the environmentally friendly technologies. And there is another organization called EcoCert. It's like a organic certification organization. It is founded in France. And this organization like certify the food, detergent, and perfume, and textiles. And the factory once is called Kuroki, landed in Okayama. And this factory used so much money to like to produce the high quality jeans, and also natural dye and cotton, and to protect the environment. Thank you.
And if we could have the first set of presenters up, and if anyone has any questions, we have a microphone here and here, and the students would be happy to answer any of your questions.
I got it.
Okay, I just wanted to know how you guys, like, do you ever see the practices coming over to the U.S. and people spending the money? Like, for example, on the borough presentation, you were saying that a lot of the denim was like $1,000, $800. And I see people wearing things like that, but I'm assuming many times that they're the less expensive versions of it, because when I've seen it up here, it's not $1,000. So how do you see that becoming an American thing?
The microphone, yeah.
Personally, I would hope it would just become a desirable type of garment to wear. Clearly, it's easy to do because of the abundance of materials that we have. Like the garment I'm wearing is made from less than $3 worth of clothes from the Goodwill. So clearly my garment for sale would not be $1,800. If I do my retail math, it's probably like 12. So yeah, it's a form of hope, I guess, that people would want to take part in the practice. Thank you.
Hi, thank you all so much. It was wonderful. So I'm wondering, can you talk a little bit about how what you've learned has sort of what you've brought back in terms of sort of inspiration for the way that you're thinking about your design, your fashion, your conceptual development?
Yes. So in my final thesis collection, I was actually like using the denim for like part of my design. And from like this trip, like knowing all the history of like why denim and why pre-wash and why washing stuff like supposed to look, like I kind of get the sense of like what I'm doing and why I'm doing this. Like they just like normally people like Zara, like other people just like doing the washing because it's washing, because like it looks like normal pants, but like why they doing those? This is kind of like the question before I go to the trip. I kind of like thinking, like why washing? Why not just plain denim? So from like knowing all the history, knowing the textile from Japan, I was understand more about like washing stuff. Like I was thinking like washing my denim to have looks more like a denim jacket, but like when I come back from the Japan, I was actually changing the mind. Like why not just showing the salvage, showing the like the pure blue denim.
So I think for me, my personal process of construction is very distinctly different from this, and I'm working a lot more with heat sealing techniques and heat practices in my thesis work. But I think the connection between this process and that is that it's very much about what processes work with what materials and understanding those, you know, in context of each other. I think it's really beautiful to understand ways to manipulate material without using mechanics, without using techniques and machinery that are invented or created specifically for materials like polyester or synthetics. I think just the use of hand in this has really kind of created a nice balance for me in the learning process. So.
I'll answer too. Personally, I would say that being in Japan, more than anything, affirmed the values that I already have, considering design, and helped me to kind of realize that I'm going to have an audience, even if it's not maybe American. I do have an audience somewhere, which is nice to know.
For me, I think the traditional technique is very important for us. Learn it and recreate it is very important. Just thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I had a question about, like early in the beginning of the presentation when you were talking about in Japan, sort of the group of people where this sort of type of fabric and type of style of fabric arose from were people who were extremely poor, and they were also suffering. So I was just wondering about the dichotomy of sort of the spirit. I think you were speaking of the spirit in the cloth and sort of a way of maybe honoring or representing the suffering of the people who started this as you're co-opting the fabric and the style. So I was just wondering if you might speak to that a little bit.
It's definitely, in my research, I reached out to a lot of academics who had written books on Buro, and all of them claimed that I could not call it an art practice. It was an ethnographic phenomenon that occurred because of the a collective poverty that existed. So we're in that crossroads of definitely trying to honor it, but it really is a luxury practice right now, and we cannot deny that because of how easily manufacturing has become making clothing accessible. It is, I believe it is an art form, and it's probably worth every penny that people want to charge you. So I guess it's in the attitude of when you encounter these items that you pay homage personally that it's a rag and not treat it as if it's something to dismiss. Yeah. You feel it though, that museum, and we can all attest, that museum was probably the best experience, a user experience in a museum setting for clothing, because we got to really, really engage in it. So, yeah.
I do want to echo one of the things that I kept hearing throughout the course is how most of the students were quick to figure out that the Japanese value what they buy, and they don't look at it as something that is just this temporary thing. So when they buy something, they embrace it. It becomes part of storytelling, which I thought was quite interesting too. And most of the students would point that out to me. So that was really quite interesting.
I have a question. What was the biggest surprise to you guys in comparing American denim and denim in Japan? If there is any.
I would say like Japan, I feel like it's more respects that the raw material, the raw the Americans like more about the style, more about the like painting, like how about like some like amazing wash, like some how about like there's like picture on the back of the jacket, but like for Japan, it's really like the good material, the function of the pants, like how many years you can wear them, like people start wearing the salvage denim and wear them for like 5 years to get their own wash and fitted. It's like, it's more respect to the clothes and also like more pay attention on the material. Yeah.
Okay, I've got two, one's for Amy. Sorry. We were just talking about what you were wearing earlier. Yeah. And it comes from your semester 1 work for thesis focus now? Elective Connect. Would you tell the audience about that particular project and why you're wearing what you're wearing? Because it does speak to the borough's origins. And I also want to get Gina to speak about her own thesis and the textiles around what you're doing in your thesis and why you're not using this work that you've done here as a narrative, because they are very, very similar. You may not have to speak about it, but just think about it. But Amy, if you wouldn't mind just sharing your story about that project.
So the ensemble that I'm wearing today really predates my understanding of borough. I just was interested in what stories a closet could tell if we went into our closet and took what we had and used it to kind of remake new clothes. And it was poignant for me that then when this research project came up, that borough was a topic, because for me it made sense. I was already interested in kind of reuse, but to see how it had been turned into an art form came full circle. So I guess in this opportunity of this MFA, there really are these holistic connections that happen. We're in a space where things come to you. You put it out into the universe, and then these opportunities come back. So I was very lucky in that respect. Okay.
Sorry, can you ask me?
So your thesis, right? Ocean trash reused, right? It's about recycling. It's about using ocean waste to generate materials, textiles, and then turn them into beautiful art forms that represent the damages of the ocean and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
You spoke very specifically about processes and the long time and the longevity and the dye-in, the time amount, blah, blah, blah. I just did an Eliza. The time needed to make a certain color, right? You talked to that, you spoke to that.
Yeah.
I want you to, you don't necessarily have to do this, I'm just doing it in front of everyone so they acknowledge that I'm noticing this. In your thesis, you're developing textiles that are using waste processes and trash that all go through very long processes of degradation or disappearing and blah, 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 right? And that's something that you're looking at. I'm wondering, have you thought about the parallels between what you've spoke to here and your thesis? And if you haven't, you should have. Yeah, so maybe you could speak a little bit to that.
Okay, thank you. At first, I want to say my thesis is about ocean waste, but I'm not a sustainable people, so I just want to say to wake people to concentrate about the ocean environment. I start where I can't connect with my thesis because I think it's in the pendant course. I just want to say what I learned from this trip. But indigo design is a good method or technique. It's very real method. But for me, sorry. I'm more interested in the colorful things, not only the blue, because I know the indigo design will show. Yeah. Okay, I can connect the indigo design and my thesis. Fabric development is a good way. Yeah. Thank you.
I also have the mic here. If someone doesn't want to get up and stand, I can pass the mic to you if you have a question. Yep.
Thank you. All of your presentations were great. But I wonder if, as fashion designers, you can comment on our current ongoing trend of destroying denim and selling it pre-destroyed, not merely pre-washed, and what you were just presenting as thoughtfully and preciously mended and repurposed for a long life. Is there a cultural difference there? Is it a fashion difference there? And another comment on that is I noticed a lack of spandex in all of your denim. So if you have any comments on those two thoughts, I'd love to hear them.
We actually have some students that will be speaking to some of the spandex next. Does anybody want to respond in terms of?
Well, okay, so I might be able to answer this, but I think that what we saw in Japan, they were making Japan has an elevated jeans production relative to other jeans production in the rest of the world. And I think that there are a bunch of different factors that go into why people want to wear something that's worn. It's cultural, like, glorification of old money, like, I think is at the root of all of it. But we saw both, raw all the way to completely worn, sandblasted denim. We saw all those different phases, yeah. And I think, like Wu said, I think it's all a matter of mostly comfort, actually, that comes down to what your choice is and what you wear. Because raw denim is actually very, very stiff and incredibly uncomfortable, and you can't really wear it. It needs to be treated somehow in order for you to be able to put it on your body.
Or to have the privilege of wearing it in.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think also there's just like a cultural training that everyone goes through that dictates what they prefer. Yeah.
So I think I also want to speak to this. It's like I think the two different distinguished from America and Japan is like Americans more pay attention on the style and more like on like how it look on the body, but like Japan is more like function, like what this jeans can give to me. Like back to before, it's like wearing jeans, fitted jeans is becomes a cool things. Like I wear this for because all my friends wear this, is cool. But like when everyone is doing the wash jeans, Japan's actually like wear more salvage jeans, wear more like they more pay attention on the fabric themselves. Like it's more, I want my own wash, I want my personality and engagement into the garment. So which is really interesting because like from all the fast fashion we see, like we don't value the clothes, but in Japan they do really value them and really pay attention.
I just want to speak to the spandex and denim part a little bit, and I believe there's some other people covering this, so I'm not going to go into it too much because I want to give them some space to have their talks as well. But in terms of sort of sustainability, separating elastic from cotton fibers in post-production for any type of reuse is very, very challenging, and it's not typically done. So I think that, you know, culturally, there's definitely an attraction to having clothing that's fitted in a specific way, and spandex kind of can lend you easier control with less skill over that, is my perspective on it. I do think that, you know, if you're talking about clothing that has a longer life, I was looking for the word longevity, but a longer life, the fibers without elastic in them shape to the body, and your body wears them in. So I think that lends it, just even the structural quality of the fiber is a little stronger without the elastic. And we definitely saw production that was on both ends of the spectrum, where there was elastic and then where there was non-elastic cotton. So.
Great, so we're going to take a quick short 10-minute break. So if you guys want some coffee and to look at some of the Kuroki denim, feel free to do so around the corner, and then we'll continue with the second half of the presentations after that. Everybody, we're going to start with our second half of presentations. Next, we have Unrei Chung presenting on the machine.
Hello everyone. So my topic is about the machine and denim industry. My own thesis for the 2 years is about immigrants and how they originated from another country, but they came to America and they grow and they become different people. When I was researching into Japanese denim industry, I found that throughout the time they bought all these vintage machines and they brought them to Japan, and now they're the leading country in the denim industry. So when I first got into this company called Kaihara, they have fiber mixing machine mixing different cottons from different countries for the best quality. They have combing machine combing the fibers into the same direction. But what's really interesting for me is the spinning machine. The spinning machine, the goal is to tighten the fibers into yarns, from roving into yarn. And the company Kaihara, their machine actually can spin 600 meters of yarn per second, which is pretty impressive. And you can imagine, for the best quality of yarn, the temperature and the humidity are all carefully controlled. And in the factory, they actually have all these little tubes going around the machine that are blowing air, like little robot arms. And they're basically cleaning up the machines for the fibers that got stuck on the machines, so the machines don't break down, because you can imagine these machines are probably quite expensive. And next is the ball warping machine. After the yarns are made, about 150 to 200 cones of yarn are set up on the machine, and the goal of this machine is to create the warp beam, which is the big warp cone in the center. It collects all these yarns into this big rope and circular around them. And the machine has the capability of creating the rope as long as 12,830 meters long. And there are also these little fans at the top that you can see they're acting at the same function to clean up the machine from the fibers that got stuck, which you can see at the second picture at the bottom. But it's not perfect. So there are still times that yarn can be broken down, and then the people have to check if there's light, and there's little lights that will light up, and the person has to come and tie it back manually. Next is the indigo dyeing machine. For indigo dye mass production, my classmate Gina already talked about it, so I'm just focusing on the machine here. It has about 8 to 10 tanks for the dyeing, and each tank is set up to allow height for the oxidation. It goes up to about 8 meters, and also the temperature and the pH level here is also carefully controlled. For the company Kuroki DENIM, the temperature they set up for is about 76 Celsius degree. But each company, they do have their own temperature for their own kind of shades, so each company have their own shades. Next is the machine that tie everything together and make magic happen. It's the Toyota shuttle loom, and it's named after Sakichi Toyota, who founded the Toyota Corporation, which makes car now. But before then, they were actually making these shuttle loom. And in the shuttle loom, you'll see these wooden shuttle that goes around the machine. They go back and forth. So they create these salvage denim. And about salvage denim, my classmate Eating will talk about more in a bit. But now, because of these machines, the shuttle is all wood and handmade. And this skill is slowly dying. So that's why salvage denim is becoming more and more valuable, and why it's so precious. At the bottom, you'll see the bigger machine. It's the shuttleless loom. It's the newer machine that used to create large quantity of denim. For the company Kaihara, it actually produced 3 million meters of denim per month, which is a large amount. So what they do is that they replace the wood shuttle into this metal little thing. So the wood shuttle is about this big, but the metal is like only this big. And it will just shoot across, and they cut the yarn. So it creates non-salvage denim, but what it does is that it creates large amounts for fast fashion and bigger quantity. What this machine can do is also it can work for a more complicated yarn like cotton poly or cotton tencel blend. So a little bit vintage sewing machine history here. And in 1960, Japan decided to start making their own jeans. Before, they only import jeans from America, from Europe, but they decided to make their own, so it'll be cheaper for them to purchase. But at first, they still had to import US denims, fabric, and also all these heavy-duty sewing machines for stitching these thick fabric. But in 1967, the Kaihara mill, which I had the privilege to visit, actually innovated a new way to do indigo dyeing. And from that moment on, Japan was fully self-sufficient in the jeans making process. And in today, Japan continues to use these old machines, but also innovating in their own way and adding their culture and their craftsmanship into jeans making. So for the company that I visited, Momotaro, they have all these Union Special machines, and some of these vintage machines are actually over 100 years old. So the first machine here I listed is the hemming machine. What it does is to help hemming the jeans. It has this signature chain stitch for the jeans, but also what it does is that this creates the roping effect, which you can see at the second picture up there, that you don't really see if it's stitched by the modern machines because the modern machines are too fast and too perfect. And the second machine is the felling machine, which is the one at the bottom on the right side. It is used to create the flat fell stitch, that's double chain stitch. It's used to stitch the yoke and the crotch area from front to back. And also there's waistband machine used to create and close the waistband. And this the Reese buttonhole machine. I believe there were Union Special buttonhole machines, but they became so rare that it's hard to find. But Reese are just as good. It has been the standard for keyhole, chain stitch, buttonhole making. And it's also one of the first machines that are created to imitate the hand-sewn buttonhole. And the hand-sewn buttonhole are still the highest quality, but if not possible, this buttonhole machine can do just as good. And then also at the bottom is the riveting machines for putting on the rivets on the jeans. And for the company Taikaya Shoji that we visited, they also have some newer machines like Juki shaped tacking machines to create eyelets, and also Juki hand stitch machine to make the hand stitch. So why are these machines being used and why are they important? It's because they create this beautiful vintage look on the denim that you don't really see on the newer machines because they're kind of imperfect, and the new machine, the stitches are too perfect and a little bit too modern for me, for a lot of customers. And Japan jeans manufacturers actually got all these machines throughout the time, and they didn't throw them away like a lot of America or European factories do. They saved these machines and they mastered it. So now they became the master of these machines. They know how to set it up in their own way. And so from the thread size, the stitch length, the thread color, even the kind of needle they use can change the stitch and create their own signature stitch for the brand. And at last, when I was researching into Japanese denim making, I found there's actually one Japanese guy called Mr. Echigoya that's making handmade vintage jeans in Brooklyn, here in New York. It's called Bowery Blue Makers, and he also collected a lot of old vintage machines from companies like Levi's throughout the time. He doesn't have the Union Special machines. What he has is these Singer machines. They're also vintage, and they are used to stitch down the stitches, and also the overlock down the third picture that's using to overlocking the fly, and also he also has Reese buttonhole machines. So for me, looking at these research process, I find that Japan used to be looking at United States for denim direction, for how to make denim, for all these denim knowledge. But now, because their preservation on these old machines and these old techniques, Japan now is becoming the denim expertise in the world for denim making. Thank you.
Moonjung Cheng will now present the hand.
Hi. The hand. During my research, the fact that I fascinated was the discovery of how the Japanese still valued and respect the hand compared to many Western companies shifted to mass production. And also I was interested in this topic because I'm making flower petals in my thesis all by my hand instead of using machine. So every photo here is handmade by Japan. These are the places in Japan they do everything handmade. Kamata, the oldest handmade knife place by hammering, handmade weaving in Kojima Denim Street, handmade denim made in patterns, handmade denim flowers, even they handmade dog snacks as well. The Japanese shows the value of craftsmanship and time with their hand. These places give inspiration to the passion of master and craftsmen and make my handmade denim research more valuable. I want to start with the history of Japanese handmade denim in 1960s. In the 1960s, jeans from Japan were all made by hand. Japanese create the pattern as well as the cutting, fitting, and stitching all by hand. They did not have access to specialized denim machinery. Therefore, all of the stitch was done by hand using American denim textiles. I visited the oldest handmade denim museum and brand Betty Smith. Founded in 1962, it is one of the oldest denim manufacturers and only existing museum dedicated to denim. They provide the highest quality of handmade denim jeans as well as the custom designs. What I learned in Betty Smith was handmade pattern making is so valuable to custom-made jeans. The hand-drawn patterns allow the flexibility to alter patterns as well as the fitting process. This process allows everyone to make custom jeans and also create the desire to wear them around the globe. I learned that tailors from Europe were sent to Japan to learn about Japanese pattern making skills needed to perfect fit. Today, jean company like Takaya Shoji patterns maker creates jeans all her by hand. When I asked why she does that, and she said they value the different and various line qualities. This is the Japanese traditional pattern cutting knife, teonomi. The pattern master from Betty Smith created his own teonomi by combining a knife blade with a handlebar from iron. Handmade cutting patterns and fabrics take more time than electric cutting. They respect arts and craft. The reason why they keep the handmade because they want to spend their time thinking about their customers, someone who will wear their jeans. Also, they can talk about and embed the experience and stories in their jeans. Shading jeans manually allows manufacturers to create unique finish. The master from Betty Smith showed me different techniques to create different shading. They can do custom design on jeans. First, applying chemical bleach job by brush. Oil stains can be applied with a hand. And second, damaging is hand damage with sandpaper cutting left side. And third one, which is hajinosu, is the hand technique to shape the pattern folding, which gathered by hand using beeswax comb. And fourth one is hand embroidery motifs. So every handmade detail looks all different. I learned the handmade process of denim jeans with some processes, including patterning and finishing. I felt more careful to create valuable touch with more consideration from artisan's hand. My visit to Momotaro includes the lecture about hand skills through jean making process, sewing to finishing. Momotaro jeans takes its name from Japanese legend Momotaro, the name of small boy born from giant peach who descended to earth to be the son of elderly couple. The boy rejuvenates the old couple, making them feel young again and encouraging them to follow their dreams. Momotaro creates the highest quality handmade denim jean in Japan. Momotaro today has various labels like copper, vintage, battle, and gold. Each label reflects specific cultural and traditional craft technique like shrink to fit construction, sloppier denim like samurai textiles, and denim made using hand-operated shuttle loom. Momotaro has the highest ability to combine old world techniques with Japanese traditional techniques of dyeing, denim production, and construction to create modern textiles and fit with unique signature details. Momotaro's unique peach selvage yarn is made with a peach thread, paying homage to Momotaro legend, and also leather patch as well as rivet, also a bare picture of a boy. The use of best quality cotton and indigo makes their jeans last longer and durable, as well as preserve it in good conditions. Momotaro's unique signatures and dedication makes the quality manufacturing, and this lists it as the premier denim manufacturer in the world today. So this photo is the editorial from Momotaro. Momotaro is a good example of the Japanese handmade denim. Its interpretation of Japanese traditional craft with modern textiles proves that Japanese labor-intensive craftsmanship, individual details and skills desired and valued high around the world. What I discovered is that Japanese craftsmanship and attention to hand makes Momotaro jeans desired around the globe to customers in US and Europe, selling anywhere from $700 to $2,000 a pair, recognized for expertise in Japanese craftsmanship. Thank you.
Next, we have Yi-Ting Lee presenting Selvage, the Pinnacle of Denim.
Selvage denim, especially the Japanese selvage denim, is considered the pinnacle of denim. In Japan, we saw people walk around with pairs of salvage denim jeans. Even bloggers overseas especially came to Japan for research and purchased salvage denim product. My research adjusts to why is salvage denim considered so precious, why Japanese salvage denim is so unique from other areas. Our first stop in the trip is the shop of UES Denim in Daikanyama, Tokyo. It's a small shop but famous worldwide of its vintage salvage denim. While I asked the lady in the shop why people all over the world come here to purchase your products, what is the exact speciality they're looking for? The lady in the shop showed me this pair of jeans with red lines on selvages and variations on the denim surface. She told me that the difference between salvage and non-salvage fabrics is all a matter of how the weft yarn is placed into the fabric. A shuttle loom is a weaving textile loom which uses a small device called a shuttle to fill the weft yarns by passing back and forth between both sides of the loom. This leaves one continuous yarn at all the edges, so the fabric self-seals without any stray yarns. Salvage tends to have a tighter, denser weave than non-salvage. The higher density gives the denim a sturdier hand. The use of the wooden shuttle loom technology creates variations on the denim surface. The slow and inconsistent path during the weaving process causes the yarn twist, so every yard of salvage denim is unique. The customers are purchased the vintage look age and obsessed with the uneven weave of salvage. So I would say the first uniqueness of salvage denim is the way it has been weaved. Later, we went to mills in Okayama to see how salvage denim actually be weaved. These are photos of shuttle loom machines from the mill Kuroki. The guy from the company told me that the wooden shuttle is hard to maintain and repair. The average age of wooden shuttle is 20 years. While a projectile loom hits 350 per minute, a shuttle loom can only hit 200. A shuttle loom can place about 150 weft yarns per minute on a 36-inch wide textile. A projectile loom, however, can place over 1,000 weft yarns per minute on a textile that's twice as wide. This producing nearly 15 times more fabrics in the same time span. The slow production of fabric caused the rare of salvage denim jeans. At the same time, the width of salvage denim is narrower than modern one, which causes higher yield to make a pair of jeans. While the sizing has to be placed on the edge of the fabric, limit the freedom to place pattern. Making a salvage denim jeans use only 86% of the fabric and cost 24% of waste. However, the rarer a thing is, the more it is worth. Today, salvage denim has become more desirable than non-salvage. The uniqueness and the rareness caused by the weaving techniques. The first shuttle loom weaving machine was invented in Europe, then be used to weave denim in America. Up until the 1950s, almost all denim was produced on shuttle loom machine. Salvage looms were popular in denim weaving until the mid to late 1990s. U.S. denim mills began modernizing their machinery to speed production as demand for denim grew worldwide. For these mills, they would focus more and more on increasing output. The use of old salvage looms became unwanted. During the era, Japanese were influenced by American culture brought in by U.S. soldiers. They bought the eliminated machine and continued the life of vintage salvage denim jeans. Furthermore, they produced machines in Japan as well. The pictures shown in Kuroki are showing the Toyota, which is created by the modern company of Toyota, and new trinket machine. They both used in producing salvage denim. Now Japanese monopolizing the technique of making vintage denim. Japanese salvage denim stand out by it's the closest replica of the vintage denim, and is distinguished by the application of traditional indigo dyeing, as my classmate has more detailed talk about the dyeing before. the technique is mature before denim was created. While Japanese weaves with Toyota machine, American company like Cone Mills use Draper X3. Compared with Japanese selvage, American selvage is less rigid, which have a relatively consistent look and feel. It costs because of different dyeing and weaving process. For example, American selvage is broken twill, and Japanese is 7 multiplied 4 twills. Generally speaking, jeans constructed by Japanese selvage denim share various distinct characteristics. However, Cone Mill shut down the White Oak plant selvage line years ago because of high cost and market force. We could say that the DNA of Japanese selvage denim is not only the combination of shuttle loom selvage denim and indigo dyeing, but their attitude to craft. The Japanese wabi-sabi cultures reflects on the natural fate of the selvage denim. Japanese Blue, a company doing handmade jeans, let customers share their own jeans fate on the blog. Owning your own jeans with the fate created by your lifestyle become a culture for jeans lover. Visiting the company Momotaro, the one is famous of 100% handmade denim, we could see how Japanese culture fused with the process of jeans making. All the details be taken care, and they offer 10 years warranty for each jeans. The after service show their confidence and responsibility to the product. The involvement of Japanese culture in their denim industry reflects on the way they curate the work as well. The picture took in the denim store in Daikanyama as well. In a traditional Japanese house, present a traditional kimono made by Japanese denim perfectly shows the spirit. The word takumi in Japanese could be translated into professional. Focus on one craft and make it to pinnacle is the definition of professional in Japan. It's the philosophy that Japanese people treat their job. It's how they show respect to life, not taking it for granted. It's the culture that pursuing perfection is its spirit, which puts Japanese selvage the pinnacle of denim. Thank you.
Yu-Chen Han will present Denim, Classic versus Modern.
Hi everyone. My topic is denim modern and classic. So first of all, I'd like to introduce classic denim, which is a production process. So we visit many denim production companies in Japan, like Teika, Soji, and Kuruki Denim. They are located in Okayama, and the production process are very organic. So firstly, they use the cottons to produce threads into small rolls, and then they use the thousands of threads to make the huge roll. And then they got the huge roll, and they are ready to be dyeing. So in the dyeing process, they use high temperature, and there are maximum like 12 times of dyeing. So the more times you are dyeing, the more depth of color you will get in your fabric and yarns. So after they finish dyeing, the thread was made into huge roll again and ready to go. So at last they use threads to produce final denim fabrics, which is the fourth peaks. So why the Japan denim yarns are so good? Because the company Takiya Soji we visit, they use like 4 different kinds of cottons from all over the world. They are from US, Brazil, Mexico, and Australia. So when I touch in all these different kind of fibers, some of them are very soft and some of them are very stretchy. So they make sure, so they use 4 different kinds of yarns to make sure they got the best quality of the yarn. So we back to modern. In addition to the cotton, let me introducing the modern fabric, which is Lindsay fabric, a sustainable solution. So Lindsay fabric are a superior comfort together with strength and long-lasting recovery range. So they can apply to, not only apply to apparel, but also they can apply to home textile and non-woven applications and industrial applications too. So how Lindsay's fibers are made? So they are this is a very organic making process, which they are from forest straight to wood, and the wood straight to pulp, and then back to fiber again. So compared to traditional denim, this is the very sustainable production process, which like water wasting and other dyeing process. So the main fibers for Lindsay fabric called Tencel, they are the same company. So the Tencel fibers, they are very soft, they're very shiny and very flow. So they have a very high strength, so it's very like good to touching the skin. So they made this Tencel specifically to the pajamas. So the Lindsay fabric right now is very popular. So they are all around the world in all time zones. You can link their office. So we back to classic again. And as my classmate Amy has already have a very detailed introduction of Boro, I believe that you all get familiar with the amazing fabric. After I visit the Muse Boro Museum, I was so inspired by the Boro because that kind of texture is really attractive to me. So the Boro is a kind of art that preserves the movement of time. And the layers on the layers not only shows us how they are made, but also this kind of imperfection beauty which attracts us most. So from the classic Boro textile, I inspired from them, and this method can inform on my own glitched textile. So I use different kinds of fabric and threads to make layers on layers, which is making sandwiches. Some parts peeling off represent the dreaming forgetting process from my thesis stream research. So it's the same thing with the Boro, which is the imperfection beauty. And then I apply them on the pants, and this kind of imperfection textile shape is also linked to the Boro. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
John Lanahan will be presenting Denim as the Artist's Canvas.
How you doing? Okay, Denim as the Artist's Canvas. So this is a brief overview of denim as the history of denim, and what I found most interesting was how younger generations in Japan were attracted to using denim as like a rebellious act against their parents' traditional ways. And I also began researching like which brands first started this rebellious denim act, and Avisu, which we already covered, was one of the first brands to kind of create this like rebellious urban denim, and then they also, this like rebellious urban denim then kind of transformed into this like artist's canvas. So Avisu was like the first brand to really kind of rip off the Americana Levi's denim, and they recreated their own denim using pretty much every aspect, like even the little Avisu tag that pretty much rips off the Levi's tag, and then they reincorporated the logo using paint, and they say that like this is their seagull logo, but I think it's just kind of like a complete rip-off of Levi's. And they were the first brand to kind of really start painting on denim and kind of pushing denim to the next level. And this is like their Japanese local production and the stuff that they sell in Japan. And they use denim in multiple different ways. They're using jacquard weaves to kind of create this print on this canvas, and the painting and embroidery. And then you go to their like more global website where it's worldwide, and this is more production, but mass-made painted denim by Avisu. And then Avisu, being one of the first brands to start painting on denim and creating this rebellious denim, inspired like other subcultures to kind of create their own individualism and paint on denim. This is a brand called Dog in in Shibuya, and they pretty much upcycle all garments and paint on denim, and I guess pretty sustainable. And then aside from subcultures, individuals expressing their art on denim, and this is Professor Ota from the dyeing class, and he pretty much uses discharge paste and a bunch of other mediums to kind of recreate this Asian-themed graffiti art on his denim. And then global impact, this is Issey Miyake, and they're also using denim as their canvas, but they're more production level, and they're doing like a jacquard weave onto these denim pieces. And then inspiring individuals outside of subcultures to kind of just create their own denim and be individual. And these are New York-based artists who are inspired by this Japanese movement. And then using denim as a canvas in a 3D form. These are different things that I found when we were walking around Kojima Jean Street in Japan. This little gorilla made from upcycled denim from Jean Zoo, and then these little sharks from Dania, which was where Amy was talking, where that guy made that coat. He makes these little shark packs. They're like these little emergency sculptures for your wall. In case there's an emergency, you grab it and you can kind of just have all your goods and necessities in it. And these are other denim sculptors using denim as a 3D art form. And then tying this around to my thesis, I kind of use denim in both 3D and 2D form. I like to paint, destruct it, and then also kind of use it as a sculpting method. That's where I'm at. Thank you.
And our last presenter is Anastasia Edwards-Morel, and she'll be presenting Automation Preservation.
We made it to the last one. Okay. I am going to apologize. I have a little bit of a cold, so bear with my voice at the moment. So my initial research question was about the role of technology in Japanese denim making. I have to admit that I went into this hypothesis framed by my own obsession with design and technology. I actually modeled these pants in Clo3D, which I will use throughout this presentation, from the mini patterns that you saw in Moon's presentation earlier on. I really wanted to see what heavy technology and future innovations were in this process. Based on my industry research, I was expecting to find current cutting-edge practices such as Levi's laser finishes, where they've developed lasers to create those hand-washed finishes that we have come to know as harmful for the environment. But what I found in this process and being in the mills was the automation of traditional craft. I asked about these laser finishes, and the response from our tour guides was that they'd done the research, but the new technology fell flat from the hand finish that they knew their customers expected. So I took a step back and thought about this suit. I let my mind wander and saw the similarities between the two. I thought, if technology could protect an astronaut in space, can we take that and apply it to the sandblasters? Spacesuits use the most cutting-edge fabrics with years of development, so how do we bring that to this? I developed a new question. What would our new technologies look like if we designed them around preserving craft? At the Betty Smith Museum, a few of us took part in their hands-on jeans making seminar. The experience let us customize one of their pre-made silhouettes by applying rivets using kick presses, as the men instructed us to push, 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 stop. As skilled MFA students, not all of us were successful on our first try. Around the camp-like craft bead table, the Betty Smith team explained that their consumers were disconnected from the amount of hand that went into making their denim. The experience was really there to design to show just how much effort and attention goes into each one of them. But for those of us who cannot travel to Kojima, although I do suggest it, How do we create an experience that expresses how much handwork is done? Sorry for the... So here I've mocked up a gaming experience where that you could see how these rivets were applied. Maybe the maker could put this on their website. The experience could be escalated to augmented reality or virtual reality so that the Betty Smith Museum could come to you. With the increase of digital avatars in making, there can be a connected piece of digital viewing and understanding of the hand. We were exposed to many different kinds of wash methods. At Kaihara, they had dedicated laboratories with teams that created recipes, a designed science. Outside of the lab, they had piles and piles of samples. I asked Kaihara if they had considered digitizing their washes into a subscription system, possibly so that their clients could design with their washes immediately. Clients could design collections with current offerings, pushing the boundaries of collaboration between the designers and the mills. Here I've used pre-made washes in Clo and played with them on a larger scale with a denim kimono. As a technology-focused fashion designer, I was fascinated that we are at a point in textile history that a machine-made cloth is valued as craft because of the scarcity of machine parts. As my classmates Yiting and Unre already went into detail about, the selvage machine shuttle creates a looped edge. Its successor was engineered to use projectile weft systems, increasing productivity and speed, but the engineering of shooting the weft across the machine using air or water on just one side eliminates the sought-after selvage edge. The mills were running at full capacity on our visits. The only employees we encountered were engineers and mechanics, relentlessly keeping these machines going. Is a mechanic that repairs a salvage machine an artisan, or are they a technologist like the projectile machine technicians? The move to projectile weft is a clear example of where technology was implemented for production and not craft preservation. Looking at the parts, carefully collecting dust just in case they were needed for the machines, I wondered if 3D printing could be used in the salvage machines to recreate parts. I posed this question at the mill and asked if but I was told that current 3D technology was not strong enough to run at the high power of these machines. But if car collectors are printing parts, then I believe that this technology can be developed. The question really is, do they want it to be developed? Because of the psychology connected to the scarcity of salvaged parts increases the level of desire for salvaged jeans. In the end, it is not about can technology be developed, but will it? What are the motivating factors and incentives that we put on technology development? Is it for production or preservation? From this research, I gained a huge respect for the deep sense of tradition and craft that was evident at every stop. So for Japanese denim making to be infused with technology, it would have to respect the history of craft. Thank you.
And I'd like to invite the students who just presented up, and if anyone has any questions, we have a mic here, and we also have one on the other side. I have a question for Anastasia. So it was quite interesting seeing that they were a bit hesitant with adopting new technology. Do you think in the future that they ever will?
I actually don't think that they were hesitant. I think they were...
Oh, can you talk?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't think that they were being hesitant. I think that they were being cautious. And every time I brought up these new technologies that I had researched and brought to them, they were very well aware of it. And that's obviously a commitment to their fields. I think that the adoption of technology would have to serve their purpose, and I think that tech is not always the answer, and as a tech designer, that's really interesting that this trip brought me to that conclusion. But I do think that they are very aware of the consumer desire to create a more eco and sustainable denim process. And so that is where their focus is. Really, the innovations that they have been willing to adopt have come from consumer demands. So I think that's how it's going to end up in their process.
And do you happen to see any American designers who are trying to have specialty in it going the opposite way and not doing tech but doing more handcraft?
Yeah, I am not someone who researches that or really pays attention to, which I think is so interesting at how this came full circle. But I think that there's this, the hand, or, you know, even in Brooklyn, you have a lot of hand makers and people are sought out. I would equate that to also like your cobbler or your tailor or someone that you go to because you know it'll be made with that hand and that attention.
I have a microphone here in case anybody wants to ask a question without standing.
I've got some. So I'm piggybacking off the back of the last question. So one of the courses that we have, sorry, I'm doing a bit of plug for the program as well. One of the courses we have is called Craftology, which literally speaks to craft and technology as being one just through the lens of time. So it was really inspiring for me to see that maybe subliminally that's been in the thinking within what you just brought to our attention. I think the presentations were really beautiful, guys. Good job. So there's two people I want to sort of get to speak about their thesis a bit more. Yi Ting, could you speak about your thesis in regards to calligraphy and layout? Yeah, and in regards to the way in which the patterns were laid out on the denim and the waist and so on, because that really speaks to the organization of text on a page. And then, John, I would like you to talk a bit more about your mobile canvas and your approach to that, because I felt it was missing a bit of John. It was a bit of a report. So I think we would love to share with the audience what you have. So maybe Yi Ting, you can go first.
So my thesis is actually inspired by the calligraphy practice I've done before, and I try to involve the calligraphy technique into the fashion making. So what I done my pattern is that I don't use the regular rulers to make the regular patterns, and I see the patterns as a character. So I complete it by the way I do calligraphy and use the calligraphy line to like complete the pattern. So that's what I'm like now working on.
My thesis is my mobile canvas. So originally I'm a fine artist of many different mediums. So I now use clothes and fashion to kind of like portray these different mediums, put them into the world. And I incorporate my fine art into clothes and send them off so that they're like, I guess it's like a metaphor for like a graffiti train car with graffiti, kind of like sending it off into the city so people, like the public, can enjoy it.
Yep.
So I was wondering about the lensing material and like how that like reacts differently with the indigo, and also is it then less water intensive? Like what are the kind of the comparisons of like switching to this material?
For the linsey fabric, I didn't see how they are dyeing by indigo, but I just know this kind of material is new, they are soft, and they are very stretchy and they are very sustainable compared to the traditional fabric, but I didn't see how they are dyeing with indigo. Yeah, sorry.
Any other questions? Good. Good. I hope you all enjoyed the presentation, and I'd like to give a special thanks personally to the students that really worked their butts off in such a short period of time, so super appreciated, and perhaps we can kind of give them a warm thank you. And then the other thing I wanted to say is this is going to be the first graduating class from the MFA in fashion design, and I am completely confident that their talent is going to shine for many, many years. So I wish them all the best of luck. Thank you.
Okay, just to wind up, guys, thank you all for coming and braving the snow. I'm not sure what it looks like outside right now, but I hope you got your snow boots. Sorry? We're trapped. You've got plenty of work to do. There's plenty to do, right? So I want to acknowledge a few people. First of all, of course, James Mendolia for writing the course and taking the students to Japan, and also Ariel. This program would not function without you, so thank you very much. And also Henry. But I do want to take a moment as well to talk about the program and just sort of speak to the fact that this was born of, you know, ideas that came out of my brain 3.5 years ago. So it is really validating for me to stand or to sit and watch and see the students growing so much and really embracing the ideas that were seeded, farmed all those years ago. But more so to really acknowledge them and let them know that what they are doing is informing me and the cultivation of the program as it develops and grows and continues to be developed and grows, because it's never, nothing is, you know, stagnant. We have to continue to farm these things. So I was really proud of you all guys today. Really, really good job. Even the speaking was very confident and well delivered. And yeah, I just want to say a big thank you to you. Thank you to you too, and thank you to FIT for making this happen. So thank you. And I want a photograph of all those students on the stage before you run away, please.